Hey everybody, how's it going? I am going to be talking about Highway1 today, although we have 0 viewers. So. All right, everybody. So there's a bunch of questions from one person. I'm trying to answer them. Kotiga, I see all your questions. I'm going to answer the ones that are more generic, and then I'm going to ask you to apply so that I can answer your more specific ones. All right. So what are the key values of Highway1 that primarily distinguish it from other hardware-focused accelerators? Well, Highway1 has a couple of differentiating factors. First off, it's just flat out, we provide engineers and design. We are very product focused, so we like to take in teams that have a prototype that need to move the prototype forward. Often, it's not the same as software where a small team can just build a product and then get it out there using ads and see what the traction is, see how much customers like it. Hardware is a lot more time intensive, labor intensive, resource intensive. And so if you don't already have an existing network of investors, you need to show the dream. You need to show the prototype. You need to show what the product is actually going to be. And so we spend a lot of time with you on that. Now, we try to make sure that you have spent time with customers so that you're building the right thing. We connect you with designers so that the thing that you are working with works well and is beautiful. And we have engineers to help you actually move it forward and build it. Second, we're in Silicon Valley. We have a belief that if you're going to be venture financed, you should be near the money, you should be near the talent you're going to hire, you should be near your market. And so hardware accelerators that aren't here, we think that they're at a competitive disadvantage. And finally, we train you up on manufacturing and retail because that will be the core differentiators later on. So although we focus on the prototype, getting that product ready, we want to prepare you for the big challenges ahead. After you have that prototype, after you've hired, after you've raised money, after you've figured out your brand, after you've found your customers, you are then going to have to make the damn thing at scale. That's thousands of units, hopefully tens of thousands of units, potentially if you are the rare lucky bird, hundreds of thousands to millions of units. And then you have to figure out how to get it on a shelf at a price or at a cost that actually makes you money and hopefully returns money to your investors. Hi, Brady. I'm David from DBX Drones. We develop drones for companies with logistics needs focused on. Okay. No real question here, but I'm going to guess that you're asking if you, even though you haven't closed a deal, whether or not you should still apply. Yeah, you should. In general, with B2B companies, we like to see some revenue. We like to see that there are customers, but sometimes you just flat out aren't far enough along. So there's no reason not to apply. The fact that you've engaged with customers and started to move forward is a positive sign. It would obviously be better if you had customers who were willing to write checks and who were willing to vouch for you. But that could be totally appropriate for your stage. I haven't seen the drones yet. "28 viewers, more questions." All right. Hey, Gotiga, I'm sorry. Your questions are a bit nonsensical in this format, so I'm not going to answer any more of them. You can either reparse them or mail us. So David from DBX, we're engaging with customers, but haven't. It's not a problem to participate in the program. You should apply. So Renee asks, at what stage should the product be in order to apply to Highway 1? You need to have a prototype. We need to know that you can actually build this product and that the product can be made. So, for example, right now, we have a team in our workshop right now that's been working on a new sensor for the past 2 years. And they are now trying to bring it to market. If they had just applied with the idea of doing this pie in the sky sensor, we would not have been able to accept them. This project has been too long, and it has taken that long. They needed time to actually build out the functional prototype. And they're not the only ones. You know, we have quite a few teams that usually have been working together for quite a while before coming into Highway 1. So in general, you need a functional prototype that shows that your prototype can be made and that the technology is working. You need to know that you've spoken to customers so that there's customer validation. This is an actual need and not a want. And then we want to check with your engineering team to make sure that they can actually move this forward. Hey, Timmy, I went to RPI. It was a good school. And yes, we have viable manufacturing connections in the United States. But you know, we work with factories here in California, in Portland. Our startups work with companies out on the East Coast as well. You know, I would check, if you don't end up coming to Highway 1, I would check makersrow.com. They have listings of factories and go a long way towards getting you connected to factories. Sarah McDevitt, is there a state where you'd say a startup is too far along for Highway 1? I mean, if you're shipping thousands of units and you're in production and you're moving ahead, then I think that you are too far along. If you've shipped a couple hundred and you want to professionalize and you want to kind of rethink how your product's being made and work on V2 before you go to scale to ship thousands, we've worked with teams like that. If you are a team that has a functional prototype and have not gone to manufacturing yet, we think that you're right for Highway 1. If you are a team that has a functional prototype and then you go to crowdfunding, then we don't think that you are too far along for Highway 1. We just think you did it wrong, and we don't want to take on your hot mess. You know, we think that teams that are going to crowdfunding, that are taking lots of people's money, should really know what they're making and when they'll be able to ship it. So there are some states where we think you are perfect for Highway 1. There's some states where you're probably too far along, and then there are some states where you've made bad choices and we don't want to be involved. We've had, in terms of, that's on the product side. In terms on the funding side, we've taken in teams that have raised nothing, where we are first money in, and we provide $50,000 to $100,000 in cash. And we also have taken in teams that have raised as much as $2 million. So we really run the gamut in terms of early stage hardware funding and how much value companies are able to get out of our support. We have a prototype that works. However, we've made a technology switch that requires us to build a second prototype. Does this mean we should wait until the second prototype is complete before applying? No, don't slow down. Keep moving. This, like, regardless of whether or not you get into Highway 1, you need to keep prototyping. You know that just this first prototype that you've made needs to go forward. This is not what you're going to ship. This is not what you're going to give to a factory. You need to validate this with customers. You need to make sure this is something that can actually be made. So keep moving. And in the meantime, make multiple of the first, if that's easier to do, get them in the hands of customers so that by the time you get to the second or hopefully third prototype, then you'll be able to start changing. I highly recommend that you continue prototyping. Is there a significant advantage of utilizing Highway1's engineering team versus using something like Dragon Innovation or Protoscale? So I have nothing but respect for Dragon Innovation. They're great. They've worked with tons of teams. Scott is a great guy. I don't know the Protoscale team, but I know they've done good work. The difference is they are being paid, to do this work, whereas we are investors in your company. Our full-time job is to try and help the teams in the program move forward. So we are here as collaborators next to you, trying to move your prototype forward. So it's a pretty different thing. We actually help you bring in consultants during that time. We've never had anyone actually pull in Dragon Innovation, but certainly some of their competitors have come in to help teams during their time at Highway1. From your advertising website, it seems like Highway1 is focused on consumer products. You're working on an industrial ag product. We're always looking for more B2B companies. Maybe we need to rejigger our advertising because we constantly find a dearth of them. So I encourage you to apply. We've had Farm Hub, which is agriculture, Sumo Pay, which is B2B IoT systems, ModBot, which is a modular robotics platform. We have a B2B bike company in right now. And we always have at least 1 or 2 B2B companies per cohort. We would very much like to increase that. So definitely throw your hat in the ring, Heath. Is B2B OEM licensing of a component a business model that would be appropriate for Highway1? It's one that we would consider. Often you still need to build out the reference hardware. And so that team that I mentioned earlier that has been developing the sensor, that is something that they are actively considering doing. However, they're going to be launching their own product right now towards consumers or perhaps the medical industry. But over time, as they're able to shrink the sensor down to raise volumes, I think they could easily start to license that component out. In the end, it really depends on your business model and the team and how much of a need there is for the component that you've developed. Thoughts on the future of chips? I'm noticing companies like Apple and Google starting to design chips in-house for hardware startups. We are not seeing many early indicators of early stage companies designing their own chipsets as part of their hardware, except for companies that are previous components. So I'm blanking on the name, but it's a company on a playground that's basically developing machine learning on a chip. And so that is a long play where they are trying to get, put core algorithms on a chip so that we can all have smarter devices. There are also some actually I know of a computer vision chip, but again, one is being made by a very well-funded, experienced team. And that other chip is, although it is aimed at startups, is actually being made by a fairly large company. So no, not seeing it yet on early stage companies, but go for it. For what all reasons would you even know they have? So why would we not accept an amazing prototype with an amazing team that's targeting a big ass market? Well, I mean, flat out, if you're a bunch of assholes, we don't want you in here. We don't want the cohort. We don't want to spoil the cohort. If you're coming in to work with our team, we need to know that you can actually listen, that you're coachable. Very, very rarely does a team just come up with the perfect idea. And a team that comes in thinking that they have done that they walk on water, is not one that's going to succeed. And so we see your coachability We see your ability to take feedback. We see your ability to listen to customers as a key indicator of your success down the road. And we have flagged teams and rejected teams because of these issues that I've mentioned. And teams where we've missed it, we've then seen them have problems or have a serious correction down the path. You know, if you can't listen, then you're going to have problems whether or not it hits early on. Anything else? There are other people in the room, just in case you didn't know. I often refer to the team, and I do not have a co-founder yet. Have I accepted an individual? Hey, Bridget, yes, we have accepted individuals, and I'm sorry if any of you are listening, but it was a mistake. We would not do it again. We will sometimes accept solo founders who have proven that they can build a team, but it goes back to the previous discussion. You know, someone who thinks they have all the right ideas, who doesn't think they need other people, I do not think they're going to be as successful. And that is not a place where I want to bet money. So the times that we've had people come in as solo founders where maybe they've worked with consultants, they really haven't gotten very far. You know, some of the projects are still going, but they look very similar to where they were when they left Highway 1. And it's just, they need to have somebody else there that they can depend on to move forward. You know, when you're in Highway 1, we see the 2-person teams slow down. Like, they can't keep up with all the stuff that they need to do, let alone a 1-person team. So my recommendation is, if this is your company, you've come up with the idea, then I would either try to hire people with equity who would come on, or bring on co-founders. Find people that you've worked with in the past that you respect, that you can resolve conflict with, that you think would be awesome, that you think will stand by you when the chips are down, that you don't mind sitting across a desk from at 3 a.m., and you bring them onto the team. You will move faster. The business will do better. Eric asked, do all the founders have to be located in San Francisco in order to be accepted by Highway 1? No, but the majority of the team, if not all the team, has to be in San Francisco for the duration of the program. So we accept folks from all over the world to be in the program. To actually take part in the program, you have to be in San Francisco. It's better to apply, and then we'll figure out what the circumstances are. And we've had teams apply saying they can't be there, then they understand how the program works, and then they end up changing around their plans to be here. But in general, the teams that aren't here don't move as fast. You know, you're coming to an accelerator for a reason, not just for the money. We have resources on site. We have mentors coming by. We have classes every day. We have a 10,000 square foot space, and we have 1,000 square feet of shop. We have engineers who are wandering, well, they're not really like wandering around, but who are around that you can contact and ask for help when you have a problem. And that's a lot more difficult if they haven't developed a personal relationship with you. If they don't know what your technical expertise is, and if they're not just over the shoulder, it's just very, very different. Well, Bridget, if you have a team, then that's possible, but I still think a co-founder is better. So we've had a couple of co-founders come in, or I mean, solo founders with an established 2 to 3 person team under them, and that's gone okay, but I know it was hard for them. Is it a hard rule that no solo founders will be admitted even if a sole founder has shown proficiency in everything? So if this godlike creature comes along and they are trying to build a business, how long will they be able to do all of those things at an expert level? You know, it takes hundreds of hours of CAD to move a consumer product forward. It takes really good taste in design to develop a new brand. it takes hundreds of hours of customer interviews to make sure that you are building something people want. And that's before we get to the software, the firmware, which I know takes a long time. And biz dev, which takes tons of meaningless coffees before you actually can move forward. So you sound like someone who would be able to hire really good people in that area. Solo founders, solo teams are not admitted. Solo founders are given an extra look and must have a proven ability to bring on teams. So I would definitely start to build out a team. And possibly if you have all these skills, then one of the ways you can bring people on is to offer to mentor them in these areas. We are producing a device for treating sleep problems. We applied before, but we weren't accepted. And you've made some progress since then and got a grant. Hey, Eli, yeah, you should. There's no reason not to, especially if you've made progress. There's nothing that's more depressing than, a team that we liked, that we wanted to, we were interested in, and then they show up again and they still have the same Arduino boards. That's definitely a red flag. And I know a bunch of angels where one of their major tests is they'll meet with you, and then 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, they say, what's the difference? What's changed? And so as a startup, you have to keep moving. You have to keep pushing forward. So yeah, move forward. We'll see what your progress is. We have notes probably from your interviews or essay or previous questions. Who are the advisors and mentors that are involved with helping startups in the program? So on the Highway1 staff, we have core engineering skills, so design, mechanical, firmware, electrical. We have marketing, PR, and biz dev help, and then I help with funding and story. But there's so many other things. So actually, further out on the PCH team, we also have help in the retail space and the financial space. Then we fall to our mentors, and the mentors are investors, startup founders, startup employees, long-time experience Valley people who want to work with startups, either because they'd like to become advisors, they like to have an extracurricular project, they want to give back, they like the community at Highway1, they like the excitement. And so there's a lot of different skills that can be tapped into. If you go to our website, we have a pretty clear list of who they are. And we're constantly kind of moving people out who haven't done it in a while because everyone gets busy. And we pull in new people to join the ranks. And when we do pull in new people, it generally comes from a personal referral, either from the staff or startup or other mentors. We then pair them up with an alumni to find out how helpful they are, to vet them. And then we add them to the mentor ranks. Julio asks if a team member needs to quit the regular job to be accepted. This is always a tough question. Entrepreneurship is expensive. If you have a family, it can be very risky. In general, if you expect people to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars, yes, you need to quit your job. So what we look at is not so much have you quit your job before you got funding, but who is quitting their job, who is dedicated now that you have funding. And so we had a team of 3 who all have families. They had been spending their nights and weekends developing a product, and they'd gotten really quite far. And after they got funding, that's when they quit. And it's pretty brave of them considering the age of their kids and family and the cost of the Bay Area. So yes, but you will have to follow through, and we'll check with all the members of the team to make sure they're actually going to do that. Do founders generally leave Highway1 with ongoing mentors, advisors? The biggest advice for life. So we have a broad alumni network. We have 67 teams in there. We have a Slack instance that most of the teams are on. We have an alumni list with all the founders on it. And any of the current team and previous teams are able to post to those to ask questions. And there's constant back and forth on advisors, on manufacturing, contacts, on contractors, et cetera, et cetera. Many of the mentors actually come into Highway 1 in the hopes of finding ongoing relationships. And there are quite a few who have stayed on to work with teams. Now, once you end up leaving Highway 1, generally there needs to, and you want to keep working with somebody, there generally needs to be some compensation. But that really comes down to a negotiation between you and the mentor advisor. Generally, Silicon Valley has tons of people who have experience in this. You need to make sure that the relationships works for both you and that person, and that you're not wasting your equity. You only have so much. Hey, Mark. You're using a simple existing technology for a headphones prototype. Do you work with companies that use simple existing tech, just combining them into something that's not on the market? Yes, maybe. I mean, honestly, we'd have to know more to decide. But we actually had a headphones company in our very first class, Warehouse. They had, so the headphone itself is very simple. In fact, they went to an existing headphone factory. The difference is they wanted to make headphones social. So I believe they develop a mesh network between the headphones. And so if one of you is listening to Britney Spears, the other 9 people around you can. And so that's pretty similar to what you're describing. And so in that case, it just really depends. It depends on the team, depends on if we believe in the market, depends on how much of a brand you have to build, if we think you have that skill. Warehouse themselves, they have continued to raise. They've done quite well on crowdfunding campaigns, and they just raised a whole bunch of cash. So who decides whether a team gets 100,000 per team for equity or 50,000 per team for 5%? It's primarily Highway 1's decision, but we will discuss it. But we don't negotiate either of those 2 terms. Those are the terms that we lay out, and we do not piecemeal them. So you have 2 co-founders that are part-time and have day jobs, and you're full-time. What are the requirements for being president of Highway 1 during the program? We would have a tough time accepting you. A solo full-time person with 2 part-time co-founders is not really that interesting to us. Your co-founders, I bet at least one of them would leave midway through the program, which would leave you with like 1 1/4 persons. And it's just not a good use of our money. So we would recommend that you stay in touch, you find some angels, and you find more dedicated co-founders. What skill gaps are fine and which aren't? All startups have gaps. Every company has gaps. So we just take a look at what you have and try to help you move forward. That being said, most teams at minimum have 1 person who is an engineer and 1 person who is, if not an engineer, is at least willing to take responsibility for the business and softer side. That's the basic split. If I was to say what the ideal was, it would be one hardware person, 1 software person, and then 1 business/marketing person. And I would try to keep that ratio going for a while. How many non-US startups are accepted into Highway 1 so far? I don't know. I would guess it was about 1/4 of the teams are international. We've had quite a few from Ireland. In this current class, we have we have 9 teams, and 4 from this class are international. Mexico, London, Taiwan, and Canada. We're thinking about crowdfunding before the next program because we need money. Does that help us get into the program? No. Basically, it does not. We are very concerned whenever folks who don't really know what they're doing, who are still applying to accelerators, try to raise a lot of money. And we think in general, if you do a poor job, all you've done is proven that your market is small or that you don't know how to execute a crowdfunding campaign. Crowdfunding campaigns are a dark art. And there are so many more dead bodies littered along the path than the successful ones. And most people do not count a $50,000 crowdfunding campaign as successful. That is all said with one caveat. If you are using crowdfunding to find customers and do a small constrained run that you know how to make, that you've already shipped, and it was just done to build community and to start to test out the platform, then I think kudos. We've had a number of teams do that. They've had success raising that amount of money. They've had success shipping. They've had success getting customer validation. That hasn't turned into investors being super impressed, though. So it hasn't really helped them in that regard, but it helped them with all the other metrics that investors do look at. Should the total addressable market size refer to your entire business? I mean, I think you should look at primarily what the current product is, or at least what you think you're going to be shipping within the next couple of years. And I would not immediately expand into all fitness products if you are starting out with a fitness tracker. But, you know, what is conceivably part of the family of what you're doing, I think is fair. But honestly, I need to know more to really answer that question. The one example I might give is we have a sports tracker in this class, and they definitely plan on going after other sports in the future. When they talk about their addressable market, they focus solely on that sport. They do not look at the others. Can you help with visas, or how are foreigners supposed to stay for 4 months when you can stay only 10 weeks on a tourist visa? Most of them are able to get, we give you a letter of invitation, and then you end up doing a visa break during our China trip. So I'm gonna pause for a second and just kind of explain the program. So Highway1 is a 4-month program. We are in a 10,000 square foot space in the middle of San Francisco. We have a 1,000-person shop that has 3D printers, laser cutters. We'll have a Glowforge coming sometime soon. We have CNC. We have low power tools. We have mills, lathes, bandsaws. Separate from all that, away from the dust, we have our electronics shop. We have another mill. We have a pick and place. We have oscilloscopes, several EE stations, and a brand new temperature changer. On staff, we have quite a few engineers. They are mechanical, in their disciplines are mechanical design, firmware, and electrical. We also have biz dev, communications, PR, and marketing support. During that time, during the 16 weeks, our full-time jobs are to help you, and we try to move you forward. So in the first week, actually in week 0, we laid down, okay, this is where you are, this is what the team is, this is what we think is possible given that. We introduce you, we have a mentor mixer where you pitch in front of mentors. We then have an industrial design mixer where you pitch to about 15 different design firms from around the Bay Area. This includes Whipsaw, IDEO, Ammunition, Astro, Fuse, a number of other great firms that don't quite have those brand names but produce amazing work. And 9 out of 9 of the teams in this current class found a startup-friendly deal with one of those design firms. And you may be thinking, oh, I have a designer on staff, I don't need that. Sometimes it pays to hire out from a pro. And we found that often pulling in these firms really help the team gel around their concept and realize what they're going to do. In the next 4 weeks, we'll coach you on your story. We'll have a lot of curriculum around what it means to be a hardware company, what manufacturing looks like, retail looks like, engineering looks like, marketing, crowdfunding, customer validation. We run a number of user workshops along the way where we get teams to really come in and focus on their users. Right before China, we like to sit down with you and see how far you've gone. Then we go to China for a week. You get to check out all the different kind of factories and electronics markets over there. And you can see what's possible when your product is being made at scale. Now, earlier in the program, we'll have already taken you on a Bay Area factory tour. So this is kind of a comparison. You can see what it looks like to manufacture locally versus going overseas. And there are pluses and minuses to both. After the China trip, you're basically staring straight down towards demo day. That's when we start to have some hard conversations about how far you've been able to progress, what you'll actually be able to show on demo day. In general, our goal is to get you to a looks like, works like prototype. That is what we think of as the dream. We want to make sure you have a coherent story that sells your team, that sells your vision, and explains your business model. We will have worked with you on your financials so that you know what your first couple of years of inventory and working capital look like, and we'll help you meet investors. And you will have already met probably about 20 or 30 investors and had hour-long conversations with them during the program, just so you can see what it's like to actually sit down with the folks you'll be trying to raise money from. Throughout the program, you will have been pitching every couple of weeks, plus at various events. And then towards the end, we have a demo day. And that's where you'll show off your prototype, explain your vision, and hopefully make further investor connections. A number of our teams raise during the program and then use demo day pressure to cap off any existing conversations. How many startups in the last few classes have received funding after the program? I would say about 2/3. We've had a couple of startups not be able to raise funding and then quickly dissolve. We've had, I would say, 1/3 to a half raise enough funding to move forward in a meaningful way, and a couple of others that are kind of plugging along, taking their, maybe I'm not going to say taking their time, but it's a slower road. They're not able to move as fast, but they're able to stay alive. And we've had a couple of other startups leave the program, do exactly that, find what their spot was, and then they were able to raise meaningful amounts of money. What happens to startups who might require more time to launch? Can they stay back, move back home? Can they be part of a demo day of upcoming batches? So we really try to be supportive of our alum. And this is even when you're still, say, at Highway1 ready, and we try to be really upfront with you when you're coming in about where we think you are relative to other Highway1 companies and how far we think you'll be able to get. We have room for 19 teams. We generally take about 10. So we often let teams that are not local or need a little more time, we let them stay in the office space. Now, we think it's important for teams to go off and start their own culture, start to build out their own space, but sometimes, it's good to stay home. So many teams go back home. Often they stay somewhat in Silicon Valley, and some end up staying with us. All of our alums have what we call laptop privileges. So you're welcome to show up, pull out a laptop, get on the Wi-Fi, have a coffee. You can schedule meetings with us. You can book conference rooms if the current cohort doesn't need it. Sometimes you can use the shop. It all depends. Our focus is always on the current cohort, but we do not forget that you came from here. What's the most important information and question from the application? Honestly, if you are a startup at the right stage, then the application will take you less than 15 to 20 minutes. I would say that the two most important things are just your prototype, like proving out that that is something that is worthwhile and that it works, and then the team. How do you know each other? What's your backgrounds? Why are you the team to do this? Those are the two biggest things we look at. Often market is something that we think about, but we know that that will develop because you're still figuring out the product. We do want to know that you've already thought about it. If you have insights into that market, please definitely share them. But we generally take most of those things with a grain of salt at this stage. Oh, one other caveat or one other thing is, if we give you advice, we highly recommend that you follow it by the time we talk to you again. We've had teams where, we really don't like accepting teams where only they have tried out their prototype. In general, we really like it when companies give their prototypes to users. So we had one team that applied, they'd raised some money. I even knew some of their advisors. They came from a good school, good homes, and nobody had tried their prototypes except for them. We said, okay, we'll chat with you in a week. Make sure somebody else has tried the prototype. I don't care if it's your girlfriend, somebody else. A week later, they still had an excuse why nobody else could try the prototype. And that kind of cultural bias, blinders, we weren't able to accept them. So based on the recent comment, sounds like we can continue to work on your second prototype. Eric, most people are working on the prototype during the program. The goal is to get you to a looks like, works like prototype. Often teams end up developing two separate prototypes. One works like, the other looks like. The goal is to get to integrated, but even after the program, it's often 6 months of DFM before you can actually go to manufacturing. So no, we would fully expect you to actually come in with a half-done second prototype and then work on your third, hopefully your fourth prototype when you start to take in user feedback. What if we already have a looks like prototype and a need to create a design for manufacture? We've worked with teams like that. And that you might be a little bit further along, but honestly, we would need to see. We do have some DFM skills here, but it's not where we specialize. However, without knowing more, I can't really comment. So, because you say you have a looks like, but you also need design. So that doesn't quite imply that you're done with prototyping yet. So, sorry, Arbor, we are only a hardware company. There are tons of great options for software. 500 startups, YC, Techstars does a lot of, they do some hardware, but they do a lot of software. Highway1 was specifically built only for hardware companies. My company has several different products in development. Which one should we focus on for the applications, or should we mention them all? Kata Henning. I don't know. I don't have a good answer to this question. I think you should pick the most promising one, the one that is most investable. It might be something that you want to bring up during your discussions, or I don't actually have a good answer to that one. I don't know. Pick your best. Kata, how would you answer?
A team that has split its focus is probably not going to be able to accelerate on one product at a time.
That is very true. You will not be able to do multiple products at once. It is better to focus. So I would go to your customers and figure out which one is best from them. How do I ask a second question? My second question has been in queue for 20 minutes. That was your second question, sorry. Kidding. Kidding, I'm looking for it. I don't see your second question, Shakur. My apologies.
Key switch?
Key switch?
Just one way.
Is it possible to be accepted solo and then build a team here? Okay. Would it be possible to drop by Highway1 during the summer to see the space and meet mentors, perhaps with a letter of support from within the PCH network to validate our visit? Well, so our application's closed in the next 2 weeks. You will not be able to just stop by and meet mentors. Mentors are generally off at their own jobs or running their own companies. If you are interested in Highway1, you don't have too much time but to apply now. Otherwise, we have open houses where you can come and apply or come and check it out. Vijay, yes, we do work with teams that are early. We stay in touch with them. And we will, there's a team that's in here right now that came from Canada where we've been in touch with them for, I think it was like 8 months. They'd applied, we got to know them. It wasn't quite right. They had to move forward. And something that I just want to explain, we have staff and we have mentors. On staff are the engineers. That's where we have the core people who are here daily to help you. Mentors are super smart people who are willing to give up their time, who work in the startup space and will come in and spend a couple of hours with you a month. So my bad, probably you wanted to meet the staff. My suggestion is that if you are interested, you apply. You'll get to know some of us during that process. You can then come by during one of the open houses. But in general, we're pretty busy during the day, either helping out startups, trying to select the next cohort, or prepping the space for the next cohort. There's pretty much just 3 modes here. Business models, B2B OEM licensing and ultra-thin flexible key switch for mobile keyboards. I think we would need to see a functional prototype of this technology working. Whether or not it has to be a full keyboard or not, I mean, really depends on how compelling your demo is. So, I mean, I'm wondering if you would be coming in to build a reference piece of hardware for your potential customers. But in general, we would need to see it working to know that it actually is functional. So, first we check to make sure you are a hardware company. Then we look at the team. Then we look at the product. Then we look at the market. Then we look at stage. Bridget, demo day is not open to the public. We run a friends and family one where you can invite your friends and family and advisors to come and check it out. And then we have an investor only one where literally everybody in the door keeps an investor out. So we do not open it up. Ruko, it is not possible to be accepted solo and then build a team here. It is super hard to recruit. There are people who have hired during this time, but usually they're the teams that already have a bigger team and have a little bit of money. Startups with Kickstarters. Nicola, it's unclear exactly what you mean, but I think if you are able to get people excited about your product and you're not selling the product, but instead engaging the community, that would be awesome. We haven't seen anybody actually be able to do that. But if you are able to get people that excited about your product, then More power to you. Bridget, yes, I agree. You should talk to Rocco. All right, any other questions? So our applications are, the dates are, the info is right there. Highway1 apply. I mean, even if you think you are too early, I think it's better to start chatting with us now because we can coach you to get ready for the next cohort. If an advisor has equity in the business, should she be here in San Francisco or the first two co-founders is enough? So it's a little unclear, but in general, we think that the co-founders and the team should be in San Francisco. We understand extenuating circumstances, but you will not move as far if you're not here during the program. And that's just been proven out time and time again. We had a team, super solid team, been working together for years, show up 2 weeks late this time because of some other work they had to do. And they were just behind, and they're still behind. We had another team where two of the co-founders were getting married. They'd had their honeymoon planned for over a year, so we didn't want to stop that. And basically, they ended up losing about 2 weeks of the 2 months of the program between planning for the wedding, being gone. Their team didn't get as much work done while they were gone because everyone knew they were on vacation. It was just kind of a waste of everybody. Or anyway, it was not good. So we advise that anyone who is core to the business be here during the program. Advisors are advisors. Advisors give advice. Advice can be done from anywhere. And generally, if you're going to be tapping them a lot, if you're going to be asking for them to review your work, to help you model something, to make introductions, to give you business connections, then it often makes sense to give them equity. Can I help Tim cook by any chance? No, but one time I was in a yogurt shop where Tim Cook was. One time. Dun, dun, dun. If a 2 to 3 year old company is developing a new product based on their learning and has diluted more than 20% of their equity to angel investors, would they still be accepted based on other parameters? That doesn't really sound like a major issue to me. We've accepted teams with more dilution, and if you are a solid team that is moving forward and now going into hardware or developing a new hardware product, and you don't have existing product liabilities, then I think that could make a ton of sense. All that said, you need to see, you won't be able to move your distribution center to Highway1. When prototyping during the program, mechanical parts sometimes take a lot of time. CNC, 3D printing, should we consider to build a prototyping schedule for the first 6 months? Yeah, and that's something you can do during the application process. I mean, chatting with our team about that, there is nothing that would get the mechanical engineers here on staff excited than a team that is thinking 6 months out and is starting to think that way. We'll hop on the phone, do hangouts with you as soon as you're accepted to start doing long-term planning like that. So that's not a problem. Formal support from the program, being in the space on a regular basis, getting shop access through us, won't happen until the program starts, but starting to think long-term or helping you with hires is something we can do right away. Cool, Nicole. I will check out XRYs later. Sounds like an interesting idea. Any other questions? Did I just disappear? Okay. We are 2 founders. We are 2 founders and have 5 team members working with us. If we are selected in the program, then can we bring them in the program? Okay. Yes. We are 2 founders.